Marcus Reed had a rule about Saturdays. No phone calls. No business emails. No decisions that required a suit. Saturdays belonged to him the way very little else in his life did, quietly, completely, without negotiation. He had built that rule the same way he had built everything else, carefully, over time, and at a cost that most people would not have been willing to pay. By the time he was 41 years old, Marcus Reed owned a 7-bedroom house on Sycamore Drive in Hollow Creek, Ohio. He owned the pool behind it, the half-acre of land surrounding it, the oak trees that lined the fence, and every blade of grass between the back patio and the water. He had the deed to prove it. He had 3 copies of the deed, actually, one in the safe upstairs, one in his attorney's office downtown, and one folded inside the blue towel that sat on the pool chair every single Saturday. That last copy was not an accident. It was a Saturday in late July when the sky was the particular shade of blue that makes people in Ohio feel like summer might actually be real this year, not just a rumor that lasts 3 weeks. Marcus had been in the pool for 11 minutes. He knew the exact number because he had started counting laps from the moment he pushed off the wall, the way he counted everything, methodically, without drama, because numbers did not lie to you and did not surprise you and did not show up in your backyard without warning. The water was cold enough to feel good. The sun was high. The neighborhood was quiet in the way that expensive neighborhoods are always quiet on Saturday afternoons, which is a silence that costs money and knows it. He completed his 5th lap and turned at the far end of the pool, and when he surfaced and shook the water from his face, he saw the shadow fall across the surface of the water. He did not react. He had learned not to react, the way a man learns not to flinch when a car backfires near him, not because the sound stops being loud, but because the flinch costs you something and the sound is going to happen regardless. 2 officers stood at his fence line. One was tall, one was shorter. Both were in uniform. The gate behind them was open, which meant they had let themselves in, which meant someone had called them, which meant that somewhere on Sycamore Drive a neighbor had looked out a window, seen a black man in a pool, and decided that required a response. He still did not react. He swam to the pool steps and climbed out slowly. Not in a hurry. Not defiant either, just deliberate, the way a man moves when he has decided a long time ago that he will never give anyone the satisfaction of watching him scramble. He reached for his towel, the blue one, on the chair, and dried his face first, then his arms. He kept his eyes on the officers the whole time. He was wearing swimming shorts and nothing else, which meant he was standing in front of 2 armed strangers with no jacket, no wallet, no phone, and nothing that looked like authority. He had the deed, though. Right there in the towel. He had always had the deed. The taller officer spoke first. "Hey there. We got a call about He paused the way people pause when they are editing what they were about to say. "There was a report of a suspicious individual in this area. Can you tell me what you're doing back here?" Marcus looked at him for a moment. 1 full second of nothing. Then he said, "I'm swimming." The shorter officer shifted his weight. "Do you live here, sir?" There it was. Those 4 words. Marcus had been asked some version of them in every room he had ever entered that was not built for someone like him. He had been asked in conference rooms on the 42nd floor of buildings he later bought shares in. He had been asked at restaurants with dim lighting and wine lists that started at $90 a bottle. He had been asked in the parking lot of his own office building on a Tuesday morning in 2019, by a security guard who was 12 years younger than him and who would, 3 months later, be replaced by a firm that Marcus's company had contracted. He had been asked so many times that the words had lost their ability to wound him in the moment. They only wounded him later, at 2 in the morning, in the dark, when there was nothing left to be deliberate about. "Yes," Marcus said. "I live here." "Could you?" The taller officer glanced at his partner, then back. "Would you be able to show us some kind of ID? Just to sort this out quickly." Marcus looked at the gate they had walked through without knocking. He looked at the house behind him, 7 bedrooms, limestone countertops in the kitchen, a library on the 2nd floor with floor-to-ceiling shelves that he had designed himself because he had grown up in a house with no books and he had decided at age 11 that when he had a home of his own it would be full of them. He looked back at the officers. "I don't have my ID on me," he said. "I've been swimming." The shorter officer nodded slowly. Not rudely, but with the particular patience of someone who has already decided how this ends. Marcus turned to the chair. He picked up the blue towel and unfolded it with both hands, unhurried, the way a man unfolds something he has carried for a long time. He held out the document. "This is the deed to the property," he said. "You'll find my name on the first line. Marcus James Reed. The address on the second line is 1140 Sycamore Drive, Hollow Creek, Ohio. Which is where we're standing." The taller officer took the paper. He read it. He read it the way people read things they were hoping would say something different. The shorter officer leaned over and read it too. Neither of them said anything for a moment. A bird moved through the oak tree by the fence. The pool filter hummed. 3 houses down, someone started a lawnmower and then, after a few seconds, stopped it. The taller officer folded the deed along its original crease, carefully, almost respectfully, which Marcus noticed, and handed it back. "We're sorry for the disturbance, sir," he said. His voice was lower now. Not unkind. Just quieter. "We got a call and we had to respond. You understand." Marcus took the paper back. He did not say that he understood. He said, "Have a good afternoon." And he watched them walk back through his gate. His gate, with his latch, on his fence, on his land, paid for in full, every document filed, every tax paid on time, every inspection passed without comment. He stood there until their car pulled away from the curb. He could not see the street from where he was standing, but he heard the engine. He heard it start and idle and then grow quieter as it moved down Sycamore Drive. Then he folded the deed back into the towel. Then he got back in the pool. He did not think about the neighbor who had called, not yet. That was for 2 in the morning. That was for later, when the deliberateness ran out and the questions came in, the ones without good answers. Who was it? The family with the white SUV, 3 houses north. The older men at the end of the street who had never once returned a wave. Did it matter? Would knowing change it? Right now, it was Saturday. The water was still cold. The sky was still that specific Ohio blue. He pushed off the wall and started his 6th lap and counted his strokes the way he always counted them, one by one, each number clean and exact, because numbers did not lie and did not make assumptions and did not need you to explain yourself before they let you in. He swam for another 40 minutes. Nobody came back. What the neighbors on Sycamore Drive did not know, and perhaps would not have fully absorbed even if they had, was the precise shape of the life that had produced that pool and that deed and that blue towel with its folded document. Marcus Reed had grown up 40 minutes east of Hollow Creek, in a neighborhood called Draper Hill, where the streets were named after trees that no longer grew there. His mother worked 2 jobs, one at a school cafeteria and one at a dry cleaning counter on the weekend, and she did both without complaint and without the luxury of deciding that Saturdays belonged to her. He had been an exceptional student, which in Draper Hill meant he was sometimes treated as a curiosity by teachers who seemed surprised that excellence had found its way to a desk in their classroom. He did not find this discouraging. He found it informative. He filed the information away the same way he would later file deeds and documents and contracts, not out of bitterness, but out of preparation. He received a scholarship to Ohio State. He studied business and finance and worked a part-time job at a copy center and a second job doing data entry on nights when the copy center was closed. He graduated with honors and took a job at a mid-sized investment firm in Columbus, where he was one of 2 black employees in a building of 63 people and where he learned, inside of his first month, that being twice as prepared produced approximately half the credit. He filed that information away too. He built his own firm at 32. A wealth management company that started with 4 clients, 2 of whom were his mother's co-workers, and grew over the following decade into something that managed assets across 4 states. By 40 he was worth more money than everyone who had ever made him explain himself, combined, and then some. He did not move to Sycamore Drive to make a point. He moved there because it had a yard large enough for the pool and a library room with south-facing windows and a quiet that he had spent his whole life working toward. He was not there to prove anything to anyone. The deed in the towel was the only concession he made to a world that kept asking him to prove things anyway. His attorney, a practical woman named Dana who had known him since Ohio State, had suggested the idea after a different incident 2 years earlier at a rental property he owned across town. She had said it the way she said most things, without sentiment, without drama, with the directness of someone who has spent 20 years watching prepared people fare better than unprepared ones. Carry documentation, she said. Not because you should have to. Because you do. He had thought about that sentence a lot. He thought about it every Saturday when he placed the blue towel on the chair. Not because it made him angry, though sometimes it did. But because it was simply, plainly, exactly true, the way so many of the most important sentences in his life had been true, clearly and completely, and at a cost he had not chosen to pay but had paid regardless. He never told his mother about the incident on Sycamore Drive. She was 67 now and lived in a good house in Columbus that he had bought for her, and she had worked hard enough in her life that he had made a private decision not to introduce new worries into it if he could help it. He also never found out which neighbor had called. He had suspicions, but suspicions were not facts, and Marcus Reed had built his entire life on the discipline of not acting on things he could not document. What he did do, on the following Monday, was call his attorney. He described the visit. He recorded the date, the time, the badge numbers he had quietly read on the officers' uniforms while they were reading the deed, the exact sequence of events, the words that were used. Dana listened without interrupting, which was one of the things he valued most about her. "You want to file a formal complaint?" she asked when he finished. He thought about it. "Not yet," he said. "I want a record. A complete one. In case. In case." Two of the most quietly loaded words in the English language, when spoken by a man who has spent 41 years knowing that the world will sometimes require him to prove things that it asks no one else to prove. Dana filed the record. Marcus went back to work. He had a company to run. He had employees, 26 of them, 14 of whom were people who looked like him, because he had made that a priority not out of sentiment but out of a conviction, forged slowly over 20 years in rooms where he was the only one, that talent is evenly distributed and opportunity is not, and that he was in a position to do something small about that imbalance and intended to. He had clients who trusted him with the money they had worked for. He had a mother who called every Sunday at 11. He had a library on the second floor with books he had been meaning to read for 6 months and a pool in the backyard that was, on Saturdays, completely his. The summer continued. The Ohio sky went through its phases, blue, then heavy, then gray, then blue again. The oak trees along the fence began to turn in September, slowly at first and then all at once the way Ohio autumns do, like the season made a decision and committed to it. Marcus swam his laps every Saturday that the weather allowed, and some Saturdays that it probably didn't. He counted his strokes. He kept the blue towel on the chair. Nobody came to his gate again. But the deed stayed in the towel. He was not a man who believed in forgetting things simply because they had stopped happening. He was a man who believed in records, in preparation, in the discipline of staying ready for a world that had shown him, repeatedly and without apology, that readiness was not optional. He was also, on his best Saturdays, a man who could push off the wall of his pool and feel the cold water close over him and count his strokes and feel, for 40 minutes, something that was close enough to peace that the difference almost didn't matter. Almost. The pool was his. The deed was filed. The water didn't ask him anything. He swam.